Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are returning to the My Favorite LJN tournament. Currently, we are on episode 2-13. That is round 2, episode 13, or part 13 of the tournament. So, as you saw, as you scroll through my listing, we've got a ton of new figures that have come in over the last week or so. So, a lot of review videos going on over the last week, week and a half. And this upcoming week, no different. I am planning a lot of reviews. I've kind of slowed down on the daily upload with the wrestler of the week or wrestler of the day sort of thing. So, as you guys know, I'm kind of creating these 1-minute shorts, and we're looking at different wrestlers and the different action figures for each of those wrestlers of the day. And I am uploading those videos to TikTok, but I'm also uploading that same video to the YouTube Shorts as well. The idea is to upload it to TikTok, and hopefully they follow the path to my YouTube channel. And I'm trying my best to try and get my channel over 1,000 subs. It's slow moving. So right now I think I'm somewhere like 40 videos over subscribers. And I'm trying my best to keep it to a 1-to-1 ratio. If I have 500 videos, I want 500 subscribers, essentially. So, having a ton more videos and subscribers, it's kind of killing myself by doing having the dailies every single day for the past 4 months straight. So, I mean, if I had continue posting videos every 2 days, 3 days, like I had been doing, 4 days, etc., I'd probably be ahead of the schedule, be ahead of the curve, but it's fine, man. I enjoy setting my alarm and getting up at a set time every day, getting up, getting my coffee or cereal in the morning, sitting down and watching the video in the morning. So, and for those that wake up in the morning with me and watch the episodes as well, or maybe you catch the episode late at night, I'm glad you have something to watch at the end of the day as well. I know a lot of guys say that it helps you go to sleep as well, so hopefully my soothing voice is, I want guys to be able to actually watch the video and enjoy it, but you know what? If the soothing tone of my voice helps you fall asleep, so be it. As long as I get a view for that episode, I think that's what matters, right? As long as the episodes are getting watched, essentially. And people are enjoying it one way or another. So I did say round 2-13. We are going to dive right into today's video. And let's see what the first matchup is going to feature. From Robert Jackson, we are looking at the Big John Stud referee. And he is going to square off against Wrestling Rider Hercules. Another one of those tough ones. Without fail. Ricky Steamboat Red. And he is going to square off against Junkyard Dog. And I guess that's going to be Junkyard Dog Original. Greg Valentine Original will do battle against Scott Steiner. And the last matchup is going to feature Warlord as he does battle against Hogan from John Ruggiero. Alright, so actually, yeah, J.R. Hogan. Yeah. So, Hogan from John Ruggiero takes on Warlord. Will be the last match. I'm going to pause to get these figures pulled, and we will begin momentarily. Alright, everybody. Alright, let's get started. First matchup we said was going to be Stud Referee squares off against Hercules. So, Hercules is a resin figure. Very similar to the Warlord LJN Series 6 figure. I've always said a resin figure always has the capabilities of winning a tournament like this. For the longest time, this Hercules figure was, in my estimation, a top 10 figure among all of my figures. Now, obviously, as the collection has just grown so insurmountably over the last couple of years, do I still classify this as a top 10 figure? Probably not. It doesn't mean I feel any less about the figure. It just means that they're just awesome pieces. Who was it? Where did I see it? I wonder if it was Chad's channel. I think over on Chaos Collectibles, if I'm not mistaken. I think Chad has this same figure, and I think he has Hercules in blue trunks. And I'm like, man, you know what? I think that blue trunk figure really pops even more. So I really like that one. But this is a fantastic piece. So for those that have watched my tournaments in the past, when I first did this, my favorite LJN tournament, you look at the Hercules figures that I owned. You look at original Roman warrior Hercules from Series 4 LJN. You look at the Raider Nation Hercules that I had, that where they took the Billy Jack Haynes figure, right? And they turned that into a Hercules type. And I took this figure. And once upon a time, I had basically all the characters, all like characters, side by side. So when you looked at that bookshelf or that DVD shelf, they were all, situated just like this on the shelf, right? So, and because I was going basically in order as they were situated on the shelf, all Hercules figures squared off against each other. And this figure in the first tournament did extremely well. Was he a semi-finalist? I don't believe so. I think this was probably a round 5 figure, maybe round 4 at worst. But I think this one did extremely well. So I coveted this one like crazy. And I can't even remember, who took this one out. But you have to imagine it's probably like a top-notch figure, like someone like a Bruiser Brody or maybe like an Ultimate Warrior or something. So this figure probably could have potentially won that first tournament. It was that good. Now, you're looking at 130 figures, let's say, in that first tournament. So, I mean, that was probably his golden opportunity. Now, you're looking at 320 figures in this tournament. So, I mean, obviously, the opportunities have basically dwindled to, I don't want to say non-existent, but yeah, I would say probably less than 1% now chance of winning. Even though this is a fantastic figure, it's just, there's just too many great pieces. And the likeness, accessories, it's resin, but yeah, that does give it a leg back. It does, or leg back. It doesn't give it a leg up. So obviously, rubber figures are the ones I covet. Rubber figures give it the leg up in competition. It is a drawback to be a resin figure. Leg back. Kind of crack am I smoking? But this is a fantastic piece. Big John Stud, shoot. Every time I bring up one of the Big John Stud figures, either one of the 2 referee studs or original figure, I keep asking myself, Big John Stud against Big John Stud, who am I going to choose? Am I going to look at the original Series 1 stud, or am I going to go with one of the referees? The referee technically does give you a little bit more of that graphic design. I make the argument that I do covet originality above all else, but at the same time, you look at the way that I put this preference on customs. So how do I make the argument that I covet originality when I hold my customs in such high esteem? So it's kind of funny to sit there and think, what happens if one day or one video those two figures, square off against each other? Original Big John Studd has always done very well in my tournaments. Always to the end. Big John Studd is going to win this battle. There's not really too much to say about this battle. Like I said, the first tournament, Big John Studd was a finalist. Original Big John Studd, obviously. I've only had one Big John Studd figure in the past. Original. So this is the first time I've ever had customs of Big John Studd. The second tournament, he made it to the semifinals. In the semifinals, he went up against the same exact character, same exact figure that he defeated in the semifinals in the previous tournament. But that time around, I decided to push the other figure forward. So technically, he could have been a finalist both tournaments. But still, finalist and semifinalist in both tournaments. So you see how much I value this figure. Whether it's going to be an original figure or one of the customs, I still feel like one of the stud figures are going to be back in round 6. Not a guarantee, but I think you are going to probably see 5 figures. I don't think there's going to be 4 figures in the semifinals. I think you'll see 4 figures or 5 figures, and I think a Big John Studd will be there. You might see 2 Big John Studs, but I think you'll have at least one there. And there is a reason I still classify LJN Big John Studd as my favorite LJN figure. And yeah, part of that still has to do with that Sid Vicious Galoo pose. Even though Sid Vicious Galoo came out 5 years later, still, it's the figure that I compare it to. And it's my, Sid Vicious being my favorite figure of all time, essentially. So, next matchup is... So, this one is actually a very tough battle that features Junkyard Dog going up against Ricky Steamboat. Now, Ricky Steamboat, in essence, when you're looking at original Ricky Steamboat, one of my least favorite figures, and it's a very simple, plain figure. I look at original Ricky Steamboat and I'm like, okay, you know what? With that particular pose, he's essentially Scott Steiner from Galoob. Instead of Scott Steiner like so from Galoob, right? That's all you're doing. Ricky Steamboat, Scott Steiner. The reason I value this figure so much, now there is something a little bit different, obviously, about the skin tone of the figure, and I don't know if I necessarily covet that as much, but, it's fine. I'm not hating on the flesh tone of the figure. The red and the green make the figure pop. It's spectacular. It's not an ideal copycat or replica to the original design that LJN had decided to come up with before they pivoted to the all-black figure, but it's close enough. You add on the extra graphics with the little name drop on the boots, right? You got the little graphics of the dragon design. This is an incredible piece. You throw in the headband. Even I think the face is even slightly upgraded to just a small extent. So, among the Ricky Steamboats, I don't know. Because you got a really awesome Robert Jackson in white. You got the one from Wrestling Rider in white. You got this one in red, obviously. So there are a few Ricky Steamboat customs that I own that are pretty freaking solid pieces. And I think they all made it to round 2. I think only original didn't make it forward, if I'm not mistaken. When I look at Junkyard Dog, in the very early stages of my LJN collecting, so when I say I started collecting LJNs, I always say tail end of 2021, right? When, I don't know. when did I pick up my first LJN figure? I estimate sometime around September of 2021. It could have been October, it could have been November, but I'm going to say sometime around September, October of 2021. So between September, December 2021, I had, before I went on deployment, I probably had maybe 10, 20, 30 LGNs. I don't know how many. Not a whole lot. I mean, I was picking them up like crazy, so probably had more than I even, probably even had a whole lot more than that. But for a while, Junkyard Dog probably was like my number. I was classifying him as my number 5 favorite figure. Now, obviously, as I got more and more figures in, he eventually fell further and further down the list. He is still, in my opinion, a top 20 LJN figure. And when you look at, and I brought this up before, and I'll probably still bring it up periodically throughout this tournament. When you look at Galoob, so many of their figures are reminiscent to the LJN figures. They're both stationary figures. They don't have movable parts. And a lot of Galoob figures are mimicked after LJN. You look at Ric Flair or Rick Steiner, and then you look at Jimmy Garvin, Dustin Rhodes. These figures that are crouched over, feet apart, arms down low, spread. That's basically what Junkyard Dog is. Feet apart, he's crouched over, arms apart. Unlike the other figures, his arms aren't down low. His arms are actually much higher. So, good for attack, good body slam pose, clothesline punch. So, excellent playable action figure. A fantastic playable action figure. But something I just don't say is necessarily a go-to figure for me. Well, why is that if he's such an enjoyable or perfect pose playable figure? Grippage. I always talk about grip. And because of that slouch, the grip, it just feels awkward on the figure. But if you're going to use a figure, I mean, you could do a lot worse than Junkyard Dog. This is a lot more tough than you could imagine. Junkyard Dog is a much more playable figure. I love the fact that he comes with accessory. That is pretty freaking amazing. Ricky Steamboat. I mean, the only Ricky Steamboat, I don't really remember. I don't think I watched Ricky. I don't think I watched Junkyard Dog as a kid. Like, everything I remember from Junkyard Dog is through videos and stuff like that. Like, I don't think I've actually physically watched him on TV. Ricky Steamboat in his, get up, and his dragon get up. I mean, I remember watching him back then, coming into the ring, breathing, shooting up the fire and whatnot. So, I mean, he's definitely not the Ricky Steamboat that most people remember from AWA days, late 70s into the 80s. Different territories, AWA and WWF in the 80s, mid 80s, late 80s, early 90s, WCW early 90s. Different gimmick. One of only a handful of characters in life that never turned bad, never turned heel. So I thought that was pretty awesome. I love the overall color and detail of the figure. To me, this particular figure still means a lot. I'm really leaning towards Ricky Steamboat. I'm really leaning towards this piece. But at the same time, I don't know if I've ever seen Junkyard Dog necessarily make it very far in any of my tournaments. Like, I don't think he's ever made it any further than the second round. I could be wrong. Maybe he has been a third or fourth rounder. I don't think so. I think he's always been like a first or second rounder. I would really like to see what this figure can do if given the opportunity for advancement into later rounds. This is an awesome design, great looking figure. I know this figure will not win my tournament. I think Junkyard Dog really does give you a much better opportunity for success. Not just going into round 3, but moving past into round 4 and possible round 5. Does Junkyard Dog win the tournament? He won't. I already know this. But it's not just about looking at to the next round. It's about looking for possible advancement into future rounds. And like I said, I think Junkyard Dog has a much better opportunity to advance to the 4th round than just simply being erased in round 3. So I don't know if Ricky Steamboat makes it out of round 3. So for this matchup, I'm going to put Junkyard Dog into the 3rd round. This battle is going to feature original Greg Valentine taking on Scott Steiner. Now, again, how many times do I gotta talk about this figure, man? You guys know the deal with this Greg Valentine figure. I did not care about this figure. Greg Valentine, to me, growing up, he was just someone that was there. I watched. He was never a superstar. In my eyes, he was never a superstar. He was middle of your rotation type of wrestler. Like, a guy that you would see come in a Royal Rumble and just exist. You knew he wasn't going to beat up on anybody. You knew he wasn't going to eliminate a ton of guys. You knew he wasn't going to win that Rumble. He was just there. When I got this figure, I didn't care about the figure. I didn't think the figure was anything special. This figure meant absolutely nothing to me. I bought this figure because it was an LJN figure and I needed it for the collection. Then, one day I decided I wanted to create my favorite LJN tournament. But I didn't want to simply do, I like this figure better. I like this figure better. I like that. No, I wanted to do something real. I wanted to do something real. I wanted to do something fun. I wanted to be able to talk with other people, meet new people. So I decided to create a YouTube channel. Like, who the heck creates a YouTube channel at 37 years old, right? But I created a YouTube channel, and I created a YouTube channel for the sole purpose of making a My Favorite LJN tournament. I've never made videos before, and I had no freaking idea how I was going to perform the tournament, what I was going to say, how I was going to create the videos or anything like that. I didn't know how to upload videos, so yeah, my first tournament was, I mean, for a first time user, it was what it was. It wasn't horrendous. I mean, as someone who watched it myself, I mean, I liked it. I mean, I watched each episode several times over, so I think I was a fan of my own work. But like, when I look at those videos and I come back, I watch these episodes, I'm like, yeah, there's like no comparison. So obviously you get better at making your own videos over time. You kind of progress as it should be. And part of the idea of making the My Favorite LJN tournament was not just looking at the figures and talking about the characters, but actually talking about the actual physical playability of the action figures. And not having these figures as a kid and not understanding the feel of the figures and how they actually function and how they actually play. obviously I had to utilize them myself in order to actually better describe them and make better judgments on the figures. So I put together a few different Royal Rumble matches, so just so that I could legitimately have a good grasp of the functionality of each figure. And during those Rumbles, no other figure was utilized more than Greg Valentine. Every so often, I would constantly go back to this figure and kind of keep, batting them back and forth because the figure was just so freaking fun to use. And I thought this was an absolutely stupid pose, horrendous. And go figure, it was actually a perfect pose and an absolutely perfect body slam pose. When you look at, Stud and Kamala, Andre and Hogan, and I've talked about, I love the separation of their legs and the bended knees because it gave you that perfect to be a body slam pose. This right here, it gave that, mix this with that bended knee. Yeah, he has an absolute perfect body slam pose. So, clothesline punch, this was a fantastic figure. And so, easily made my first tournament. This was easily a 5th round figure. Shortly thereafter, after finishing my first tournament, I made a top 10 favorite LJN list, and he came in at number 5 among my favorite LJN figures. Today, because it's such a simple, plain figure, very, just straight jet black, the figure is too plain, which means that I don't know if I would keep him at number 5. I'd probably drop him to number 10 or somewhere around there. It doesn't mean he's any worse of a figure. I still say it's one of the greatest action figures ever made, but it's just simply because he doesn't have all of the different attributes that I covet, color and design. So, but otherwise, still a flawless figure. And kind of going back and obviously watching old matchups and seeing how he operated, Intercontinental Champion, Tag Team Champion. Yeah, the man really was a superstar in the 80s. So when I look at him and I compare him to guys like Coco Beware, there is no comparison. Coco Beware was not a superstar. Greg Valentine most certainly was. Now, a man who actually was a superstar by every incarnation of the word. Well, you don't need to use other incarnations. There's only one way to address it. Superstar is fine. Scott Steiner. Whenever I put on WCW, there's only like 8 people that ever wrestled. Vader, Ric Flair, the Nasty Boys, Legion of Doom, Steiners, Sting. How many is that? I don't know. I wasn't counting, but those are basically the only guys I ever saw wrestle whenever I turned on WCW in the early 90s. And the only time I watched WCW is kind of like when you're flipping through the channels type of deal. And when you got guys like Nasty Boys and the Steiner Brothers, Legion of Doom, when they pivoted from WCW into WWF, that was so freaking awesome. Tag team champions in WCW. WCW. These guys, the Steiner Brothers were fantastic. And Scott Steiner, I kind of felt like I don't want to say Rick Steiner was ever holding him back, because Rick Steiner was a phenomenal performer. These guys were collegiate athletes, collegiate wrestlers as well, but I kind of feel like if it could have been like a whole rocker scenario where if Scott Steiner ever decided to break free, he could have become the next Shawn Michaels and really went on this breakout path of becoming like this mega superstar, Intercontinental Champion runs, heavyweight champion runs. But the Steiner Brothers together, they're just certain tandems that you just should not break up. Legion of Doom was one of those tandems that just meshed so well together. Bushwhackers. You couldn't imagine seeing the Bushwhackers as individual wrestlers or seeing them tag with someone else. They're just tandems that work so well together, are just synonymous with each other. So Steiner Brothers, same thing. I mean, yeah, they eventually they were no longer together. I think Scott actually turned on Rick at one point. I mean, I don't know that storyline. I that was long after I stopped watching, but from John Ruggiero, when he made the Steiner Brothers, I wanted the Rick Steiner more than anything, but I mean, obviously I can't get Rick without getting Scott. And he kind of made like the sort of Hasbro Series 9 Steiner Brothers, so I was so grateful to get this. And the way he does the hair. Now, this one he did a little bit differently because it's not like flat hair. He actually put little waves in the hair, so this one was a little bit different. When you look at the arms down, like your Ted Arcidi and Bam Bam Bigelow, I'm not a huge fan of this type of pose. I mean, is it like? No, I mean, it's just in too much. That's what kind of makes Ted Arcidi a bad figure, is because of how far it is. If the arms were up, I think the Hogan pose for the Series 1 Hogan pose for Ted Arcidi, especially with big biceps and everything, for Hogan and for Ted Arcidi and for One Man Gang, that pose would have been spectacular. This is a freaking killer look. John Ruggiero did an absolutely amazing job. But the Greg Valentine LJN is one of the absolute elite figures. Not a top tier figure, but an absolute elite figure. Top 10 LJN figure. So Greg Valentine is, more times than not, is going to be an obvious answer. The last battle is going to feature original Warlord as he squares off against another John Ruggiero exclusive. And this one is Hulk Hogan, the NWO Hogan. So, the NWO Hogan, I got one of these from John Ruggiero. I got a very similar one that also came from Eric, Wrestling Rider as well. And I don't know which one or both of them actually made it to round 2. So I think Eric's Hogan version made it to round 2, but I could be wrong. But you know what? I think it did make it to round 2. I think it was eliminated earlier in the round. So not a whole lot I could say about this because, like I said, I mean, I wasn't watching wrestling. Now, Hogan went to WCW, what, 94? So 94, 95. I mean, I don't know about this. I wasn't watching WCW. I don't know anything about WCW and the whole New World Order and all that stuff. I couldn't tell you anything about it. All I know is a lot of people take the Jesse Ventura figures and they always turn them into Hogan. And I hate that. Now, you actually look at, like I said, you look at the Jesse Ventura original LJN without even touching that figure. You could see why people turn him into Hogan so many times, because he looks like Hulk Hogan, exactly like Hogan. You look at freaking photos of Hogan and Jesse Ventura next to each other, they look like freaking twin brothers. It's crazy how closely they resemble one another. Yeah, man. This right here, and it's awesome that Hogan squares up against the Warlord. 1989 Royal Rumble. Why do I always bring up that Royal Rumble, especially when I talk about Hogan and Warlord? Because it's one of those insane moments that drive me nuts. Warlord is a mega superstar. Powers of Pain was a mega tag team. They were a brute force. They are rated right there with Demolition and Legion of Doom, right? So, Why do you have a mega superstar like Warlord in a Royal Rumble for a half of a second? Warlord enters Royal Rumble. Hulk Hogan clotheslines him over the ropes. He's out. That is a waste of a roster spot. I freaking despise that. I mean, it's humiliating when, and I think they give credit to like guys like Luke for having the record for like 4 seconds. But I'm like, wait a minute, why is Luke at 4 seconds having the record when guys like Warlord have literally come in and literally stepped through the ropes and clothesline over the ropes immediately? You're telling me that half a second is longer than the 4 seconds you're crediting, Luke for or whatever? So, insane. Now, Warlord, his action figure, one of the 10 greatest LJN figures ever made. I still say that this is one of the absolute elite LJN originals. Head mold, absolute perfection, right? Fighting pose, I still covet the fighting pose. I still think it's one of the best play poses. Arms, maybe not the most solid ever, right? I mean, you can still do really awesome punches. Maybe not the greatest body slam in the world, which kind of is probably the reason why I put this figure probably like somewhere around number 9 best LJN. But like I said before, if I redo that list, this ain't number 9 no more. In fact, if I redo this list, top 10, he's probably not a top 10 figure anymore for me. Because SD Jones is not a number 10 best LJN. SD Jones, if he's not number 1, he's got to be somewhere in the top 4, top 5. Warlord, he may not be number 9. He may not even be number 10 anymore. He may not be in the top 10. Fantastic figure. Don't take anything wrong from this piece. I mean, this right here is an absolute no-brainer. Warlord is going to absolutely blow this Hogan figure away, but play pose is just not the best in the world. Now, there are a few figures, like the new Ram Treasures Goldberg figure. Sadly, that figure was added to the collection too late in this tournament, so by time, round 2 started, well, long after round 2 started, I got the Goldberg figure in. And so that one's not part of the tournament, but you take like the Volume 2 Warrior, Warlord pose, right? So Berserker, Berserker's arms might actually be about the same size, maybe a little bit further. Berserker is a little bit taller. Like I said, Goldberg's very similar. So not the worst pose in the world. It's very playable. So yeah, if you are going to customize a figure, Warlord is definitely, one of those figures that I would definitely recommend. So, all right, guys, that does complete episode 2-13. As always, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, thanks, everybody.